Are you prepared to confront what you secretly already know about people? Or will you cling to the comforting lies that keep you feeling safe while quietly keeping you weak? From the moment humans began living together, a silent tension was born between who we claim to be and how we actually behave when something real is at stake. Civilization taught us language, customs, laws, and morality, but beneath these layers, the machinery of human nature never changed. Machiavelli did not invent this truth. He simply refused to look away from it. Where others spoke of virtue, he studied behavior. Where philosophers imagined ideal citizens, he observed real ones. And what he saw was unsettling, not because humans are monsters, but because they are predictable in ways that shatter our illusions. People like to believe they are guided by values, that their actions emerge from principle and conscience. But Machiavelli noticed something darker and far more consistent. Humans are guided by advantage. They speak the language of morality, but they act in the language of survival, ambition, and fear. Values become tools, not anchors. They are invoked when useful and abandoned when costly. This does not make humans evil, it makes them human. The danger lies in pretending otherwise. Human nature is not cruel by default. It is conditional. Kindness flows when resources are abundant and risks are low. Loyalty thrives when benefits outweigh sacrifices. Honesty survives when consequences are minimal. But remove safety, introduce competition, apply pressure, and the mask slips effortlessly. Machiavelli saw that morality is a luxury belief, sustained by stability. When stability collapses, behavior reverts to instinct, and instinct has no ethics, it has objectives. This is the first dark truth most people resist. They want to believe that goodness is intrinsic and corruption is learned. Machiavelli saw the reverse. Self-interest is intrinsic, restraint is learned, imposed, and maintained by structure. Without structure, humans do not rise to virtue. They descend to impulse. Laws, norms, reputations, and punishments exist not because humans are good, but because they are not. People do not break rules because they are wicked. They break rules because rules are inconvenient when opportunity appears. If the reward is high enough and the risk is low enough, most people will justify almost anything. They will not see themselves as villains. They will rationalize, contextualize, explain. Machiavelli understood that humans are masters of self-deception. They commit acts driven by self-interest while telling themselves stories of necessity or fairness. One of Machiavelli's most disturbing insights was that humans are more offended by losing benefits than by moral violations. They forgive cruelty faster than weakness. They resent loss more than injustice. Take something from a person and they will hate you forever. Lie to them and they may forgive you if it benefits them later. This is not a cynical exaggeration. It is observable behavior repeated across history. People claim to value honesty, yet they reward those who tell them what they want to hear. They praise courage, yet punish those who speak inconvenient truths. They condemn manipulation, yet follow manipulators when manipulation delivers results. Machiavelli saw that humans admire outcomes, not methods. They retroactively moralize success and demonize failure. Virtue is assigned after victory, not before. This is why intentions are irrelevant in power. People do not judge leaders by purity of heart, but by perceived strength and success. A leader who wins is forgiven. A leader who loses is condemned, regardless of morality. Machiavelli was not endorsing this behavior, he was documenting it. And documentation is dangerous because it removes excuses. Humans are not consistent. They are situational. They are generous when generosity costs nothing. They are loyal when loyalty is rewarded. They are brave when bravery is praised. Change the incentives and behavior shifts instantly. This is why Machiavelli warned leaders never to build systems based on ideal behavior. Systems must assume selfishness, ambition, envy, and fear. When they do, stability emerges. When they don't, collapse follows. People often misinterpret Machiavelli as pessimistic. In truth, he was realistic. He did not believe humans were irredeemable. He believed they were manageable, but only if you stop lying to yourself about what motivates them. Hope is not a strategy. Faith is not governance. Expecting gratitude is a mistake. Expecting opportunism is wisdom. Another uncomfortable truth Machiavelli exposed is that people prefer the appearance of virtue to the reality of it. They care more about being seen as good than about being good. Reputation matters more than character. This is why public morality is performative. People behave ethically when watched and opportunistically when unseen. This is not hypocrisy, it is human psychology responding to surveillance and consequence. Humans fear isolation more than dishonor. They would rather be wrong with the group than right alone. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He saw how crowds amplify cruelty while diffusing responsibility. In groups, individuals surrender conscience to consensus. Atrocities are rarely committed by monsters. They are committed by ordinary people shielded by numbers and narratives. Power reveals human nature faster than poverty ever could. Give someone authority without accountability and watch what emerges. Machiavelli saw that people do not rise morally with power. They reveal what restraint was hiding. Some reveal discipline. Many reveal hunger. Most reveal insecurity. This is why unchecked power corrupts, not because power is evil, but because it removes consequences. People love to believe they are different, that they would act better under pressure, that they would remain loyal when others defect. Machiavelli would challenge this fantasy ruthlessly. He would say you do not know who you are until survival is threatened, until something you value is on the line, until fear whispers options you never thought you'd consider. Human nature is elastic. It stretches to justify behavior after the fact. People act first, then invent reasons. They betray, then explain. They take, then rationalize. Machiavelli observed that conscience is often a narrator, not a guide. It tells a story after the decision has already been made. This is why people resent mirrors. Machiavelli held one up to humanity and refused to soften the reflection. He showed that love is conditional, loyalty temporary, gratitude fleeting. He showed that humans will support you while you are useful and abandon you when you are not. This is not cruelty. It is economics of behavior. Humans are more driven by fear of loss than hope of gain. They will act more decisively to avoid losing status, security, or comfort than to achieve something new. Machiavelli built his understanding of power on this truth. Fear motivates more reliably than inspiration. Loss aversion shapes behavior more strongly than aspiration. People say they want freedom, but they crave order. They want to feel safe more than they want to feel free. This contradiction defines politics, leadership, and social structures. Machiavelli saw that people will surrender liberty willingly if it guarantees stability. They will pry, say restraint until chaos appears, then beg for authority. Even love, the most sacred human emotion, is not immune to self-interest. Love persists while it is nourished. When sacrifice outweighs reward, love erodes. Machiavelli shocked moral philosophers by saying it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved. Not because fear is better, but because love depends on goodwill, and goodwill evaporates under strain. Humans remember pain longer than kindness. They adapt quickly to comfort and slowly to loss. This asymmetry governs memory, resentment, and revenge. A single humiliation outweighs years of generosity. Machiavelli understood this and warned leaders never to humiliate unnecessarily. Cruelty creates enemies. Controlled severity creates order. Another dark truth is that humans admire strength even when it harms them. They follow dominant figures instinctively. Confidence attracts allegiance regardless of morality. Uncertainty repels loyalty regardless of goodness. Machiavelli observed that people forgive cruelty faster than indecision. They want leaders who act, not leaders who hesitate. People despise weakness because it creates insecurity. Weakness forces everyone else to manage uncertainty. Strong authority absorbs chaos. This is why people complain about harsh leaders yet fear their absence. Disorder is more terrifying than domination. Human nature is reactive. People do not plan betrayal. They drift into it when conditions align. Opportunity plus justification equals action. Machiavelli saw that preventing betrayal is not about trust. It is about removing opportunity and increasing consequence. People respect boundaries they did not set. Self-imposed boundaries are ignored. External boundaries are obeyed. This is why laws exist. This is why enforcement matters. Without enforcement, morality becomes suggestion, and suggestions are optional. Machiavelli. His darkest insight may be this: humans rarely hate oppression as much as they hate instability. They tolerate injustice longer than uncertainty. They adapt to suffering if it is predictable. They revolt when chaos threatens survival. This is why revolutions rarely produce virtue. They produce new hierarchies. Power never disappears. It changes hands. Those who understand human nature take it. Those who deny it lose it. By now, discomfort should be rising, because this truth does not live safely in theory. It crawls into memory. You begin recalling moments when you acted against your stated values, when fear guided you more than principle, when advantage whispered louder than conscience. Machiavelli is not accusing you, he is explaining you. The dark truth about human nature is not that people are evil, it is that they are conditional. Context shapes character, pressure reveals priorities, and without structure, consequence, and authority, human goodness is fragile. Machiavelli did not destroy morality, he stripped it of fantasy. He showed that ethics without power are prayers, that virtue without enforcement is hope, and hope has never governed humans for long. This is only the beginning of the descent, because once you accept what humans are, you must confront what leadership, power, and control actually require, and that realization is far more dangerous than ignorance. Once this truth settles in your mind, it begins to change how you see every interaction, every promise, every display of virtue. Machiavelli would say that the danger is not in knowing human nature, but in half knowing it. Partial awareness creates hesitation, full awareness creates clarity, and clarity, once achieved, is irreversible. You stop interpreting behavior through intention and begin reading it through incentive. You stop listening to what people say they believe and start observing what they protect, what they pursue, what they fear losing. Humans rarely act from a single motive. They act from layered motivations, with self-interest sitting quietly at the center, dressed in the language of morality. Machiavelli understood that people do not lie to others as often as they lie to themselves. They convince themselves that their actions are justified, necessary, even noble. This self-deception is what makes human behavior so reliable. People will commit acts that benefit them while genuinely believing they had no other choice. This is why betrayal almost never feels like betrayal to the one committing it. It feels like adaptation, survival, realignment. Machiavelli observed that loyalty is not a moral bond, but a transactional one. It persists as long as conditions remain favorable. When conditions change, loyalty dissolves without guilt. Those who expect loyalty as a permanent state misunderstand human psychology and invite their own downfall. People often say they value truth, but Machiavelli saw that what they actually value is reassurance. Truth is tolerated only when it does not threaten identity, status, or comfort. When truth becomes dangerous, it is rejected, punished, or reframed as hostility. This is why flatterers thrive in every era. They do not succeed because leaders are stupid, but because leaders are human. Even the powerful crave emotional safety. Human nature is also deeply comparative. People measure themselves not against ideals, but against others. Envy, not greed, drives much of human behavior. Machiavelli understood envy as one of the most destabilizing forces in any system. People do not resent inequality as much as they resent perceived unfairness. They will tolerate suffering if they believe it is shared. They revolt when they believe someone else is benefiting unjustly. This is why public perception matters more than PR. Ivate reality. Humans respond to symbols, they react to appearances, they align with narratives. Machiavelli knew that controlling perception was not manipulation, it was governance. Because people act on what they believe is true, not on what is objectively true. Ignore perception, and reality becomes irrelevant. Another uncomfortable truth Machiavelli exposed is that humans are more comfortable obeying than choosing. Choice creates anxiety. Responsibility creates fear. Many people resent freedom because it forces them to confront uncertainty. Strong authority relieves them of this burden. This is why people submit willingly to systems that restrict them, as long as those systems provide predictability. Humans also possess a remarkable ability to normalize almost anything. What once felt immoral becomes routine when repeated without consequence. Machiavelli understood that moral outrage is temporary. Behavior adapts faster than conscience. This is why early enforcement matters. If boundaries are not set early, violations become habits, and habits are far harder to break than impulses. Fear plays a central role here, not as terror, but as awareness. Awareness of consequence, awareness of limits, awareness of loss. Machiavelli saw fear as a stabilizing force when used with restraint. It anchors behavior in reality. Without fear, humans drift toward excess. With too much fear, they rebel. Balance is not kindness, it is calibration. People are also profoundly influenced by momentum. They follow what appears to be winning. Success attracts allegiance. Failure repels it. Machiavelli observed that people will abandon yesterday's hero without hesitation if tomorrow's power looks stronger. This is not treachery. It is alignment with perceived security. Humans follow stability, not virtue. This is why moral appeals fail in collapsing systems. When people feel threatened, they do not listen to sermons. They look for shelter. Authority that cannot provide safety loses legitimacy instantly. Machiavelli warned that leaders who rely on moral authority alone are exposed the moment conditions worsen. Human nature is also deeply reactive to humiliation. People can endure hardship, but they do not forgive loss of dignity. Machiavelli emphasized this repeatedly. Punishment should never humiliate unnecessarily. Humiliation creates enemies. Fear creates obedience. There is a difference, and confusing the two produces endless conflict. People are also selective in their memory. They remember harm longer than help. They forget generosity faster than offense. This asymmetry shapes resentment, revenge, and loyalty. Machiavelli understood that one act of perceived betrayal outweighs years of goodwill. This is why leaders must be cautious not only in what they do, but in how it is interpreted. Humans crave narratives that simplify complexity. They want villains and heroes, not systems and incentives. Machiavelli saw that leaders who understand this can guide behavior more effectively. Those who ignore it are swallowed by it. People will assign moral meaning to outcomes regardless of intent. If something goes wrong, someone must be blamed. Leadership means accepting that blame or losing authority. Another dark truth is that humans rarely act collectively unless pushed by emotion. Reason organizes after action, not before. Fear, anger, hope, and resentment mobilize people far more effectively than logic. Machiavelli understood that emotional currents move history, while rational explanations follow behind, pretending to have led. People also obey proximity to power. They gravitate toward those who appear close to authority. This is why courts form, inner circles emerge, and gatekeepers thrive. Machiavelli warned rulers to control access to themselves, because proximity creates influence. Those who manage access manage power. Human nature also resists uncertainty more than injustice. People can endure unfair systems if those systems are stable. They panic when rules change unpredictably. Machiavelli understood that consistency is more important than kindness. Predictable severity is preferable to unpredictable mercy. People admire decisiveness because it signals confidence. Even wrong decisions are often respected more than hesitation. Machiavelli observed that people assume decisiveness implies knowledge. Hesitation implies weakness. This perception shapes allegiance regardless of reality. There is also the truth that humans prefer illusion to despair. They cling to comforting lies because truth threatens identity. Machiavelli did not offer comfort, he offered clarity. And clarity is painful because it removes excuses. Once you understand human nature, you are responsible for acting accordingly. This knowledge changes how you see trust. Trust becomes conditional, not naive. It is built with safeguards, not hopes. Machiavelli did not reject trust, he structured it. He believed systems should function even when individuals fail. This is the difference between wisdom and idealism. Humans are also deeply influenced by scarcity. Scarcity sharpens self-interest. Abundance softens it. Machiavelli knew that crises reveal character faster than prosperity ever could. Under pressure, people reveal priorities. Values are tested not when they are praised, but when they are costly. Perhaps the most unsettling realization is this: human nature does not improve with education alone. Knowledge refines strategy, not instinct. Educated people are often more effective at justifying selfish behavior. Machiavelli understood that intelligence does not equal virtue. It often amplifies ambition. By now, the listener feels the grow and shifting. The world no longer appears moral or immoral, but conditional. Behavior becomes legible. Patterns emerge. Machiavelli's voice is no longer shocking, it is explanatory, and that is far more dangerous, because once you see human nature clearly, you cannot lead, follow, or live the same way again. You begin to understand why systems fail, why leaders fall, why movements decay, and more importantly, you begin to understand what power actually demands from those who wish to wield it. This descent is not complete yet. Understanding human nature is only the foundation. What follows is the confrontation with responsibility, because once illusion is gone, denial is no longer innocence. It is choice. Once responsibility enters the picture, everything becomes heavier. Machiavelli would say that this is the moment most people retreat. Seeing human nature clearly is one thing, accepting what that vision demands of you is another. Knowledge without responsibility is entertainment. Knowledge with responsibility is burden. And burden is what separates spectators from rulers. When you understand human nature, you can no longer pretend that outcomes are accidents. You begin to see how predictable collapse really is, how often leaders fall not because of fate, but because they ignored patterns they did not like. Machiavelli believed that ignorance is forgivable, self-deception is not. The first is a lack of information, the second is a refusal to act on it. Human beings resist responsibility because it strips them of innocence. Once you accept how people actually behave, you lose the right to be surprised by betrayal, opportunism, or cowardice. You can no longer say you didn't know, and this awareness demands preparation. It demands foresight. It demands decisions that will feel uncomfortable, even cruel, to those who still live inside comforting myths. Machiavelli understood that leadership begins where empathy ends, not because empathy is bad, but because empathy alone cannot govern systems. Empathy feels individual pain. Leadership must manage collective behavior. These two aims often conflict. The leader, who cannot prioritize the system over individual emotion, will be consumed by the system's failure. People often ask why power seems to harden those who hold it. Machiavelli would answer that power does not harden, it clarifies. It removes illusions quickly. Those who remain soft under power are not virtuous. They are unprepared, and the world punishes unpreparedness without mercy. Once you accept the dark truth about human nature, you realize that prevention is more humane than reaction. Waiting for people to behave well is naive. Designing systems that constrain bad behavior is wisdom. Machiavelli did not trust goodness. He trusted incentives. He trusted consequences. He trusted structure. These do not depend on moral purity. They function regardless of character. Human beings adapt faster than they reflect. They adjust behavior to environments instinctively. This is why environments matter more than speeches. You cannot talk people into virtue if the system rewards selfishness. You cannot inspire loyalty if betrayal is profitable. Machiavelli saw governance as environmental design, not moral persuasion. Responsibility also means accepting that some people will always test limits, not because they are villains, but because limits invite testing. Machiavelli never expected universal compliance. He expected constant pressure. Systems that assume pressure survive. Systems that assume goodwill collapse. Another heavy realization is that leadership requires selective blindness. You cannot respond to every emotion, every complaint, every grievance. Doing so fragments authority. Machiavelli believed that attention is power. Where attention goes, importance grows. Leaders who distribute attention indiscriminately lose control of priorities. Human nature also resents equality imposed from above. People accept hierarchy more easily than artificial sameness. Attempts to flatten status often produce hidden hierarchies instead. Machiavelli understood that denying hierarchy does not eliminate it. It merely drives it underground, where it becomes harder to manage. Once you see this, you begin to understand why revolutions often devour their ideals. They promise equality, transparency, virtue. Then human nature reasserts itself. New elites emerge. New incentives form. New hypocrisies replace old ones. Machiavelli was not surprised by this cycle. He expected it. Responsibility also means understanding timing. Humans forgive early severity more than late weakness. They adapt to firm rules if they are clear and consistent. They rebel against sudden crackdowns that feel desperate. Machiavelli emphasized that power must be asserted early, before challenges become normalized. People often mistake patience for wisdom. Machiavelli distinguished between patience and delay. Patience observes, delay avoids. One strengthens authority, the other weakens it. Leaders who delay difficult decisions teach others that resistance works. Over time, resistance becomes strategy. Human nature also reacts strongly to signals. Small actions communicate more than grand speeches. Enforcing a minor rule signals seriousness. Ignoring it signals permission. Machiavelli understood that discipline is symbolic. People read power through patterns, not proclamations. Responsibility demands that you stop needing to be understood. Explanation is a comfort-seeking behavior. It asks for validation. Authority does not need validation. It needs compliance. Machiavelli would say that a leader who explains too much reveals insecurity. There is also the acceptance that you cannot save everyone. Attempts to do so weaken the system and ultimately harm more people. Machiavelli believed that leadership involves choosing who to disappoint and when. Avoiding disappointment entirely is impossible. Those who try end up disappointing everyone. Human beings also require belief in inevitability. They obey what feels unavoidable. Negotiable authority invites challenge. Inevitable authority creates stability. Machiavelli did not advocate cruelty. He advocated certainty. Certainty reduces conflict because it removes false hope. Responsibility also means resisting sentimentality. Nostalgia clouds judgment. Loyalty to the past can sabotage the future. Machiavelli warned leaders not to preserve failing structures out of emotional attachment. Survival requires adaptation, not reverence. Another uncomfortable truth is that most people do not want to be responsible. They want to be led. They want someone else to decide. When leaders hesitate, anxiety spreads. When leaders act, even imperfectly, anxiety decreases. Machiavelli understood that decisiveness has psychological value independent of correctness. Once you accept this, leadership stops being about self-expression and becomes about containment. Containing chaos, containing fear, containing ambition. Containment is not oppression, it is order. Without it, human nature spills into conflict. Responsibility also strips away the fantasy of fairness. Fairness is subjective. What feels fair to one feels unjust to another. Machiavelli did not chase fairness, he chased stability. Stability allows societies to function despite disagreements. Fairness without stability dissolves into endless conflict. Human nature also responds poorly to mixed signals. Kindness followed by punishment feels arbitrary. Firmness followed by generosity feels earned. Sequence matters. Machiavelli was obsessed with sequence. Do not reward before obedience. Do not soften before control. At this stage, the listener begins to feel isolated by understanding. Conversations feel shallow. Moral debates feel performative. You see patterns others deny. This isolation is part of responsibility. Machiavelli accepted loneliness as the cost of clarity. He knew that most people would reject his insights, not because they were false, but because they were inconvenient. Truth that demands action is always unpopular. It exposes weakness, it removes excuses, it demands courage. And courage in Machiavelli's world was not about bravery in battle, it was about psychological endurance, the ability to act without applause, to enforce without hatred, to decide without consensus, to carry blame without collapse. This is where human nature and leadership fully collide. Understanding people means accepting that you will often be judged unfairly. Outcomes matter more than motives. Perception outweighs intention. Machiavelli did not fight this reality, he used it. By now you should feel the weight of this knowledge pressing inward, not as fear, but as responsibility. Because once illusions fall away, you must choose who you will be in a world governed by incentives, fear, and ambition. And that choice is approaching its final test. Now comes the moment Machiavelli would call the ultimate reckoning. The point where understanding human nature transforms from observation into action, where knowledge demands responsibility, and where illusions must be discarded entirely. There is no comfort here. There is no moral padding. There is only clarity, raw and unforgiving. Once you see how humans truly behave, how self-interest dominates, how loyalty is conditional, how fear governs more reliably than hope, you are no longer permitted the luxury of inaction. Ignorance was your shield. Sight is your burden. The first truth you must accept is that power flows to those willing to wield it decisively. Good intentions are irrelevant. Kindness without control is a liability. Empathy without boundaries invites exploitation. Machiavelli would argue that the leader who refuses to confront these realities will be swept aside, not violently, but quietly, systematically, by the inexorable currents of ambition and self-interest. Those around you will adapt to your weakness faster than you can correct it. Subtle erosion precedes total collapse, and by the time you notice, you are already behind. Human behavior does not wait for morality or ideals. It obeys incentives, perceives patterns, and reacts to structure. Those who understand this rule the world. Those who deny it are consumed by it. You can dress yourself in virtue, but virtue alone does not guide behavior. It does not create compliance. It does not produce order. What produces order is clarity, consistency, and calibrated consequence. And these qualities often feel harsh to those who still cling to comforting myths about human goodness. You must also accept that leadership is an inherently lonely position. Once you strip away the illusions, you see that most people will serve themselves first. They follow only when their self-interest aligns with yours. They obey only when authority is predictable and inevitable. You cannot rely on affection, gratitude, or loyalty as your primary tools. They are bonuses, not foundations. Machiavelli would say that to lead effectively, you must be willing to act in ways that will be misunderstood, resented, or criticized. Approval is a luxury. Obedience is a necessity. Fear, when properly understood, is not cruelty. It is reliability. People fear what is certain, what is inescapable, what carries consequence. If kindness is unaccompanied by firmness, it becomes vulnerability. If morality is unaccompanied by power, it becomes indulgence. You must calibrate your authority so that it commands respect without provoking hatred. Machiavelli emphasized that strategic fear stabilizes systems. Unenforced niceness destabilizes them. At the same time, you must act decisively. Hesitation erodes credibility faster than opposition. People do not forgive indecision. They exploit it. They test boundaries constantly. Delay communicates uncertainty. Uncertainty invites challenge. Those who hesitate are replaced, quietly but inevitably, by those who move boldly, even imperfectly. Human nature is also profoundly opportunistic. Loyalty, love, gratitude, these are conditional states. They persist only while advantage remains aligned. Machiavelli observed that humans rationalize betrayal as necessity, and when systems reward opportunism, betrayal is normalized. To lead, you must design systems where self-interest aligns with order. Otherwise, chaos will claim the space you failed to control. There is a further truth you cannot ignore. Morality without enforcement is ineffectual. The world does not honor virtue, it exploits vulnerability. Leaders who rely on goodwill alone will see their authority quietly erode. Systems collapse not because people are wicked, but because restraint cannot survive without consequence. The harshness of enforcement is the stabilizer of ethics. Without it, virtue becomes decoration, fragile and irrelevant. By now, the full weight of responsibility should be unmistakable. You cannot plead ignorance. You cannot hope for compliance. You cannot rely on niceness to carry you through the turbulence of human behavior. Machiavelli's lesson is stark. Outcomes matter more than intentions, perception more than sincerity, structure more than sentiment. To deny this is to choose irrelevance, to allow others, more decisive, more ruthless, more willing to seize what you failed to secure. And so you must act, not with cruelty for its own sake, not with malice, not with indulgence. You must act with clarity, consistency, and purpose. You must enforce boundaries, make decisive choices, and calibrate fear alongside fairness. You must accept loneliness as part of leadership. You must absorb blame without collapse. You must embrace the burden of responsibility fully, because there is no other path. The final, inescapable truth is this: human nature does not bend to ideals, It bends to power, structure, and consequence. If you wish to lead, you must operate within this reality, not pretend it does not exist. Those who refuse will be replaced. Those who act decisively will endure. Those who accept the discomfort, the unpopularity, the isolation, the moral ambiguity will survive where the naive falter. So rise now with eyes unclouded. See human nature as it is, not as you wish it to be. Accept the burden of insight and the weight of responsibility. Stand firm when others test limits. Enforce boundaries where chaos threatens. Decide decisively when hesitation tempts. Let fear be the tool of reliability, and let clarity guide every action. Do not seek approval, seek control. Do not hope to be loved, ensure you are obeyed. Do not pretend that virtue alone will protect you. Build systems that align self-interest with stability. And above all, understand this: if you do not seize authority decisively, someone else will, and they will not hesitate. They will not flinch, and they will not be nice. The darkness of human nature is no longer a secret. It is now a call. Will you rise to meet it, or will you be swept aside? The choice is yours, and the consequences are absolute.